Yarg, mateys. Okay, I'm really not going to talk like this the entire time. But welcome to You're Missing Out. I am Kyle. I am the producer of the show, and today we're doing something a little bit different. Today, for those that have joined us for the show before, we do these commentary tracks every couple of times a season. And normally you will hear Mike or Tom, usually Mike, taking the reins and guiding us through whatever commentary. But today I said no. I am the captain now, primarily because this movie rules, and I wanted to give the two of them the opportunity to really appreciate this film. It's very rare that we get to tackle something that is just pure fun and is a pure adventure film. Speaking of which, Mike, Tom, how you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to watch a film by my favorite writer, Elton Thomas. I couldn't find anything else he wrote, which is very weird, but I was glad to see him credited here. Big fan of Elton Thomas, the writer, who is definitely not an alias for anybody else.
No, definitely not.
I don't know the context of that, so now I'm just confused. That's how my day's going. Now I'm confused.
Douglas
So thank you
Fairbanks.
for that.
Douglas Fairbanks wrote this film, but he didn't want to put his name on it. So, like, he didn't want to. He didn't want people thinking it was a vanity project or something. Kyle probably knows better than I do, but nevertheless,
Yeah, he puts his name, or he puts his he's involved very heavily in the project, but didn't want it to be significantly all over the place and whatnot. But yes, part of the reason too that we are also kind of flipping the script a little bit is to fulfill a promise, a duology promise from an earlier season. In season 3, we covered Mary Pickford's "The Poor Little Rich Girl" from 1917. And in that episode, we highlighted that Mike and I had taken a trip to the Barrymore Film Center in Fort Lee, New Jersey. The Barrymore Film Center had a special exhibit called Power Couple, which centered around the relationship between Mary Pickford and her other half, Douglas Fairbanks, who is going to be the subject of today's commentary conversation. And the exhibit, fitting being in Fort Lee, considered that it is considered the birthplace of American cinema, with about 19 studios operating out of it by 1918. Now, the exhibit itself had about 200 different artifacts in it. We got to see Mary Pickford's music box, her hairbrush set. There were handwritten love letters that were written from Douglas Fairbanks to Pickford. I remember some of them being relatively saucy. I can't remember any of the actual contents of them. I don't know if you do, Mike, but they're pretty powerful stuff.
should we not to derail right off the bat, but I feel like our first image of the film itself. Should we? Is it okay, Kyle, if we jump the gun a bit and talk about the element that might be surprising viewers if they're watching along with us about this film?
Yes. So one of the many reasons that this film is inducted is not only because it defines the adventure genre as we know it, but it's also known for its use of the two-strip Technicolor. And so what you're seeing here is essentially two different strips filmed simultaneously, one in green, one in red, which is then printed over a black and white film strip in order to create the color that you see here. Now, this is essentially an earlier version of what you would ultimately see in the late 30s with The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind, which eventually adds a third strip in order to include colors like blues and purples. So if you're seeing this and wondering, how did they get that colorized version? No, this is essentially what you would be watching if you were watching it in 1926. So no shocks, no gotchas here, no refunds for going to that 1977 Star Wars film and expecting a 4K release. What is wrong with you people? This is it.
Now, a little like weird, very nerdy trivia about the two-strip Technicolor that I noticed is that the dual camera Technicolor system that is used on this film was innovated and operated by a man named Henry Sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason that sticks out to me is so Henry Sharp gives us two-strip Technicolor. Years later, the very first film to use three-strip Technicolor is an adaptation of the novel Vanity Fair, but in this case, that movie is titled Becky Sharp. And for some reason, Henry Sharp giving us 2-strip Technicolor and then 3-strip Technicolor first appearing in Becky Sharp just feels like one of those weird coincidences that hurts my head a little bit.
Well, the film industry's all run by a cabal of lizard people, so they like leaving little clues for us to try to figure it out. So I appreciate it.
The fictional character Becky Sharp is a nepo baby in the film industry, is what we're getting at.
Yeah, well, they all are.
If it doesn't derail you too much, Kyle, I'd love to talk a little bit. If I can rewind us to something we saw earlier in the credits, they excerpt from a book. Say there's a book they claim it's an excerpt. I can't find the actual book. That book I don't believe exists.
Thanks, Biden.
This book is predominantly based, or this film is predominantly based on a real book called Book of Pirates by Howard Pyle, which Fairbanks is very interested in. I heard some stories saying that he came across Jackie Coogan reading it, but who knows if that's true or not. And then a lot of this is also rooted in a general history of robberies and murders by the most notorious pirates, a 1724 book by an author known as Captain Charles Johnson. That book I have actually read, and it's one of these crazy things where like most of our pirate iconography all comes from the 1724 book by an author we can't identify. Like the Jolly Roger flag, a lot of the like pirate cliches all come from this one 1724 book, and which is written like most 1700s histories insofar as it's mostly a guy going, I did my research, but also I'm going to just come up with some stuff and we're not going to differentiate.
It's very American.
Sorry, Kyle. I hope I wasn't cutting you off too much.
No, not at all. I mean, part of why I like these moments too is I get to just stop and appreciate this too, because it really is just an incredible film. One of the other things that I can mention too is the cast only consists of about 19 people, and that drives me crazy because I cannot figure out how it's done.
Yeah.
Like I'm actively sitting here counting as I'm doing like research for it. And I even was like, is that true? Supposedly there are only 15 people that are actively credited in the movie. And then there are 4 uncredited pirate roles. But supposedly how all of the scenes and everything to make the crew look bigger are just all of the crew being reused multiple times. I again, absolutely incredible, and a contrast to an earlier film that he does, which I'll talk about later too.
It's funny because pretty big budget for its time, so it's not like it's a small movie or anything, but all of that is low budget tricks that indie films and horror movies and hucksters like Corman and Castle would pull. Shit, Hundreds of Beavers did it.
Yeah.
Technically 3 years ago, but to most of us last year, where it's like he got 3. Hey.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just love when it blows up.
So the first thing I asked when I saw that boom was, is it real boom or is it fake boom? And let me tell you, it's real boom. Because there were 4 different pirate ships or ships that were built for it, and only one of them was fully rigged, fully operable, and it was only fully rigged and operable so they could blow it up.
So that's not to be clear, that's not a miniature.
That's not a miniature. That is a full-blown 17th century galleon schooner named Muriel that was blown up for the shot.
That is the kind of shit you can only do when you are the biggest movie star in the world. Like,
or also just at a time when you can't fake things.
Yeah. But I mean, like, the fact that, and I'm sure Kyle will get to this in his context, but like, we're about to see basically the Tom Cruise of his day. Like, and I mean that even in the modern context of like Tom Cruise willing these action movies into existence and doing all his own stunts. Like, Douglas Fairbanks was one of the biggest stars of his day. He was never really given enough credit for his acting. He was viewed as like a stunt type guy, but like he was the biggest star of his day, and is also, as Kyle alluded up top, married to the greatest female American movie star of the era. So the man's got cachet that he is cashing in on this, because he's obviously done a number of swashbucklers before this. This is kind of the culmination of a lot of what he was working toward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, funny enough, one of the notes that I put on here was without Douglas Fairbanks, Tom Cruise wouldn't be jumping out of airplanes every 2 years.
Yeah.
Um,
Can we talk about? We're not going to see. You know what? I'll save it. There's an anecdote from the museum that we went to, Kyle, that I want to make sure we bring up.
yeah, of course.
My favorite thing I saw. I think your favorite thing that you saw. But I think we should perhaps wait a little later until perhaps a certain prop is employed in this film.
Correct. Correct. That was monkey.
I am not confident that monkey was treated well on that set.
Yeah.
He wasn't. I'll just tell you right now. No research done whatsoever. I'll just tell you now. No, he wasn't.
That
monkey died.
The only time a monkey has been treated worse on camera that I've seen is Aguirre Wrath of God when Klaus Kinski just hurls that cap and shit to the ground. You remember what I'm talking about, right, Tom?
I never saw that movie.
Oh, really? I thought you were in that class. Yeah, at one point, Kinski is holding this tiny monkey. It's fucked up, but he just hurls it at the ground. And you're like, oh, there's no fake in that. Why did you do that?
Man, I don't know who's worse, the Germans or the fucking Italians when it comes to just absolutely ruining animals for their movies. Fucking freakazoids. But hey, we got a monkey, so that's always cool.
We did get a monkey. And
monkey.
But yes, no, I did mention that Douglas Fairbanks, for a lot of reasons, it creates the blueprint for modern Hollywood as we know it. From the way that we treat Hollywood celebrities, the way that we talk about film distribution, the way that we talk about creative ownership and integrity. Some could say that without Douglas Fairbanks, the three of us wouldn't be able to have a conversation about film and be able to have a show that we all get to create and produce independently, and to have that creative control over. Correct. Yes. You can say.
It's his fault why I'm like this.
Correct. Yeah. You can take it up with Mr. Fairbanks.
I mean, Tom, I'll be honest. You especially, because like
I'll find Douglas Fairbanks. Hell,
well, I'm saying like Douglas Fairbanks is the origin of, not just Tom Cruise, but like you do not get Sly Stallone, you do not get Arnold Schwarzenegger, you do not get the action stars of the eras that we grew up in. I mean, arguably, you don't get. You could credit like William S. Hart, somebody like that, for like a Clint Eastwood type. But in terms of like everything from like, 80s action films, everything, it's all goes back to Fairbanks, because Fairbanks, to me anyway, like it's the fact that it's the characters that he's playing in his iconic films. Beyond this one, you've got Zorro, Robin Hood. Mm-hmm. You've got he plays D'Artagnan.
Well, it goes to the conversation about the way global cinema talks to each other, right? Because you could throw Stallone and Cruise and all of these guys at it, but you really also then got to look at those guys don't really become who they are if it isn't for the mainly the East Asian actors, the Bruce Lees, Jackie Chan, Sonny Chibas, those guys that were actually looking at movies like this and saying, all right, big action, we're going to do stunts ourselves, but because they come from a nation where there is a history and a sort of reverence for that there's a specific fighting style in these countries that these guys can train and bring a certain type of thing, which, I mean, in America, boxing maybe, but even boxing in movies wasn't really good until Raging Bull.
Well, now here's the interesting thing. I guess, Kyle, is now a good time? Can I talk about the thing we saw?
Go for it.
So, Tom, you're right about the boxing, like the physical fighting. But one thing that was very important, especially if you're doing period piece at this time, is sword fighting. Right?
Well, yeah, that.
And there are many different ways to sword fight. Douglas Fairbanks had, because he was, the definitive swashbuckler, right? Mm-hmm. He believed in authenticity, and he believed in that. So he actually had, made for his home, rehearsal swords done in the different styles of swords for different countries and different time periods.
Okay, because they have right there, that just fits into exactly what I'm saying. Of like these foreigners, these other countries are looking at like, well, this guy, you hear so many stories of these guys. Oh, we saw old black and white movies, blah blah blah. They definitely saw Fairbanks stuff and the stuff that inspired it, and so like, let's bring what this guy was kind of bringing to it.
When we were
harder edge,
when we were at the museum for the exhibit, they had his rehearsal swords there, like in a case, and we could look at them. And it really was just like remarkable to know, like when he was at home at Pick Fair with his wife, he was just like he would practice with the specific sword for the period, because he's like, no, it was different styles. You would have swung it differently, would have moved your arms differently. The weight is different, and I want to make sure it's right. And that's just like a level of dedication. And it's, to be clear, it's not like I would say that he is a quote unquote transformative performer, insofar as like, it's not like you lose Douglas Fairbanks in any of these roles, whether it's Zorro or Robin Hood or any of them. You're going to see Douglas Fairbanks be Robin Hood, but there's still a commitment to embodying the character and the period, and in a way that I think is so commendable. And I think, again, for me at least, and I don't know for Kyle specifically, but like, it felt like when we were walking around and when we got to those swords and next to them or across them were the Robin Hood boots. Mm-hmm. I almost felt like Kyle next to me going like, oh, hang on. What's this guy about? Like, that's a level of dedication that I think just you feel that when you look at it.
I agree. Well, and during a lot of the research that I did for it too, I mean, a lot of my presumptions about him ended up being right, which was the more that he evolved as a producer, as an actor, the more he was able to take control over his work, rather than what we find so often is just people sort of being complacent and being like, all right, I'm good, like this is enough, or I've kind of made it here. And instead he was like, no, I got to build on the next thing, and I got to build on the next thing, and I got to build on the next thing, which is why so much of the Black Pirate, the DNA can be found in even the 3 movies that he did prior to that, one of them being The Mark of Zorro,
which is also in the registry. So we will get to that in a future season.
Oh, yeah.
It's just interesting. Like, again, you say like that, you just see the tendrils of shit talking about Fairbanks, like, oh, he's maybe not the most, whatever you put it, like the most dynamic actor, transformative, dynamic, whatever. And that's essentially the case with every great action star. You would never say they were bad actors, but you're always going to a Jackie Chan, a Tom Cruise, a Arnold, a Clint movie, and you're like, yeah, they're not really varying what they are, not doing voices or whatever, but they'll find subtle nuances in it, because it's mainly, as we all know, it's about them doing some crazy shit and us being like, yeah, we believe them doing it. And, you see it from the jump here, more so than like, we talked about, to, bring up the fucking Voldemort of this podcast, The Birth of a Nation, talking about that as like the first blockbuster. Mm-hmm. This is like more aligned like the first action, or at least for like what we're kind of talking about with the registry. Like, we're seeing how action cinema starts really emerging outside of this, even if there's stuff
look
beforehand.
At that fucking underground cave. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off, but I just look at that. I look at that set and I'm like, this could have been in like the 50s, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, looking exactly like that, and you wouldn't be fazed. Right?
Oh well, listen, don't bring up 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea if you don't want me to completely fucking derail this conversation. But no, I mean, listen, I don't know how accurate this is. I see that the budget is listed on here as $1.3 million, which is for 1926. Quite a pretty penny.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, they really have, and they put the money forward, and we get to see it, and that's why it was, it's such a classic, it's such an enduring movie, and I have to assume at the time, because I did absolutely no research for this, a hit and an impressive movie at the time. Yes. That it's a thing that we how many times do we lament, like today, where you find out a movie was budgeted at like $300 million, and you go, how the fuck does this move? Where did it go?
And I'm glad that you mentioned Griffith too, because one of the things that got me excited as I was doing my research on Fairbanks is recognizing, I mean, outside of them founding United Artists together, he got his start through working with D.W. Griffith. Yeah. He worked on the 1915 film The Lamb, was doing a lot of comedy work, and basically was not getting the recognition that he thought that he deserved. Griffith did not see him as particularly a talented individual, or did not respect his athleticism in the way that audiences at the time seemed to. And I would argue that is what ultimately motivated him a year later to start his own production company and strike the deal with what, Famous Players and Lasky, which ultimately becomes Paramount Pictures, in order to begin to start making more of a name for himself and to start challenging the notion of, what film can be at that time. And, I was excited to read things like that, because so much of what I thought, so much of what I've said that the culmination of this show is finding works like D.W. Griffith, while controversial, trying to find the value in them. And this was also recognizing that even for his time, there were people not only willing to challenge his works, challenge his beliefs, but also to challenge the spectacles in which people would want to come and see, that were, the types of messagings that people were eager to come out to a theater to come see.
Look at the goddamn swagger he has, like, especially when he's walking down, right? And up to now. Also, I love the spelling of qualifications on the title card. But, like, you look at the stance, the way that Fairbanks carries himself here, right? We talked about it a bit with Mary Pickford on Poor Little Rich Girl, where the idea is like, well, she knows how to act for the camera better than anybody. But, like, you look at the way Fairbanks carries himself here, and, like, not only does Errol Flynn do this same energy, not only does Kirk Douglas sometimes do the same energy to evoke 20,000 again, but, like, all the way up to, like, there is no space between this character we're watching right now and Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China. Like, it's the same energy, and it's like so much of the sort of visual language that we're seeing here, particularly like in this fight, right? Like, this is how Spielberg would sometimes shoot a fight. This may have been how the famous Indiana Jones sword fight would have looked if Harrison Ford hadn't gotten sick, right?
I mean,
like,
not to besmirch the movie we're watching here, but because it's 1927, it's, a bit more primitive in its filmmaking, for not to say it's bad, but this almost feels like if he shot a swashbuckling movie in The Fabelmans as young Spielberg,
yes,
this is how young Sammy Fabelman would have shot a pirate fight, a sword fight, absolutely. I mean,
it's the fact that, like, I think the thing that Fairbanks gets, and I understand he didn't direct this film. Sure, he didn't. He fucking fired Donald Crisp off this movie as a director. By the way, the spurt of blood that we see there is one of the coolest things. The little, like, flashes of red that are, indicative of things. But he didn't direct this film. But, Kyle evoked Birth of a Nation earlier, and so did you, Tom. And the thing is, Birth of a Nation is an action film, right? But it has no action stars, right? Lillian Gish
it's a war
shines,
movie,
but nobody else
essentially.
shines. Yeah, but it also, like, nobody shines in it. Whereas, like, Fairbanks understands, look at the way that this cuts. Like, you're getting wide shots so that you can see them fighting, but it makes sure it gives you the coverage of the stars, too, so that it really pulls you into this combat and gives you, like, the juice of, I want to pull back enough so you can show me Fairbanks is really doing this, but I want you to zoom in enough because he's a good-looking guy and I want to watch him do things.
Well, it's that evolving conversation that early cinema, you could see it having with itself as it evolves. We're about a year away with this movie from a year or two from The Jazz Singer. Sound's about to come in. You see the evolution from something like Birth of a Nation to this, where it's these guys... Yeah, listen, fuck them up. Listen, fuck it, we ball. The conversation of these people, these filmmakers, realizing that the camera loves actors, that this isn't just an evolved version of, stage plays where you don't necessarily need to be like the most charismatic guy in the world. You could be, to put it frankly, a dog-ass, ugly fucking guy, but if you can act, people in the 30th row are going to be like, hey, he sure can act good. I don't know what he looks like, but he can act well. In this, you need to be like, there's a reason why we constantly, even today, try to find the most attractive people in the world, because the camera just it's movies are about that up close and personal connection. As much as we love widescreen, big fucking Lawrence of Arabia type shots and shit, it's once we get those close ups and it's like, oh, that's why we love Clint Eastwood. That's why we love so and so, Daniel Day-Lewis. It's once that camera is locked in on their face, you just go, right. This is why movies are the ultimate magic trick, because some of these guys, look at De Niro, man. De Niro in talks interviews is almost like a fucking it's like a fucking Andy Kaufman act.
Yeah.
But in movies pre 2000s, if it's not directed by Scorsese, one of the most charismatic, appealing guys in the world. We're seeing Fairbanks and people around this time really understand that that's what movies are going to have to be, what they should be, what they were designed from up on high to be. They are star-making vehicles.
And I mean, that's the thing with Fairbanks too, is like, for all of his stunts, and I don't know, I know, Kyle, you did plenty of research. I'm sure you watched some things, but for all of his stunts, his most impressive magic trick is his smile, to me. Like, that's when he locks into what the persona is he just makes that, he can smile, and suddenly you're like, oh, he captures the whole camera. Even in the earlier stuff, before he's a swashbuckler, in that comedy short that he did where he plays the cocaine-addicted detective named Coke Any Day, one of the best things. Why is that not in the registry? But, even in those, like, he just smiles and you're like, he just captures the camera, in that. He understands, there's that anecdote, I'm forgetting I believe it's Bruce Willis. There's an anecdote about Bruce Willis doing some movie. I forget which one it is. And he was like very specific about like how much dirt to have on his face, how much blood, whatever, to be like, I know what plays with my face on camera well. And I think that's something that Fairbanks inherently understood as well,
Yeah. And I think a lot of the reason that he was able to understand that was was the fact that he was able to have these early deals that he made that gave him so much creative control over his work. Even before founding UA, he had final say on scripts. You alluded to directors, Mike. He had final say on sets and costumes, stunts and action design. Like, every aspect of these films from 1916 through the end of the 20s essentially were fully controlled, fully influenced by Fairbanks in some way, shape, or form.
And with what he's, I alluded to this up top. We should maybe talk about this a little more clearly. So Donald Crisp, who we have talked about on this show before, because Donald Crisp was in How Green Was My Valley and won an Oscar for it. He had worked with Fairbanks before. He'd actually directed Fairbanks on the Zorro sequel, Don Q, Son of Zorro. And he's also acted in that film. Crisp had, I believe, been the original director for this film. And while also playing the role of McTavish in this film, Crisp was the original director, and Fairbanks fired him from directing, but still kept him in the film acting. And then Albert Parker takes over, and that's the credited director here. This little shot here, I kind of love the close-up of that, because you can tell that was just Fairbanks came up with this stunt, figured out a way of taking a moment, climbing aboard this ship that could have been just like an easy one wide shot of a guy climbing a rope, and he finds a way to make this so dynamic and interesting, And that's not the kind of thing that a lot of
I love this part right here.
Right?
It straight up comes out of Assassin's Creed in my book.
Yes!
Like booms.
Yes!
This is Ezio right here.
Yeah.
Just fully boom. And it's so good, we're gonna do it again. Like,
yeah. Well, because it's like it's this beautifully intricately designed set, and then him climbing up it, and him climbing is impressive, but also the visuals of what he's climbing are also impressive.
Yeah.
I hate to just keep bringing back the Tom Cruise comparisons, but like having a guy climb a building versus having him climb the Burj Khalifa are two different things. Oh, wait. Okay.
Here we go.
We're getting the iconic stunt, one of the most iconic film stunts ever. Like, truly in the history books, iconic film stunts. Do you have the notes, Kyle, of how they did that? Because if you want to get into it, otherwise I will.
Go for it. The only note I have is that they myth busted this. You cannot do this in real life. I'm so sorry, y'all.
So the way Fairbanks does that sliding down the sail shot, which has been replicated a million times, so much of this is replicated. I was saying to Tom that I forgot that the ending of Animal House is a protracted homage to Douglas Fairbanks and Errol Flynn. So the way they did that with the sail is the canvas was already cut. They had wires, and they swayed the sail at a 45-degree angle, angled the camera. So there's a lot of like camera trickery. Also, he's not actually using a dagger. I believe it was supposed to be like a baseball bat shaped thing that he was using to make it easier to slide down. But there was a lot of myth making around this stunt for a long time. Donald Crisp has his version of it. The historian Booten Herndon has his story of it, but Kevin Brownlow, the historian, was the one who actually figured out how they really did it. So they pre-tore they pre-tore this and then had stitches in it, so it was easier to rip through the stitches rather than him cutting through the entire canvas. So it's sort of that, we were alluding to like kind of the low budget film trickery, but there's obviously a high budget, but it's still the idea of that innovative thinking of, I have a stunt I want to do. I know this would look cool. How do we do this in a way that people aren't going to be able to figure out how we did it? And that's something I think you lose today with film. So often people watch a cool stunt and they go, well, that was CGI. Whether it was or wasn't, they can go, that was CGI. When you watch something like this, you're kind of just like, how did they do this? Like, how did they manage this? How was this physically possible for them?
Well, all that stuff is just a big part of the, audiences have gotten so desensitized to spectacle that they take it for granted. So when you do get a Tom Cruise doing that shit, or F1 recently doing those racing scenes, people start getting what, I don't even know, the reverse uncanny valley, where it's just like, oh, this doesn't seem like the shit I'm seeing usually. What is this? I'm getting kind of freaked out. This feels real. And again, the way all of these, everything starts from somewhere, but every action movie, any movie that has a special effects, be it a gunshot, a knife wound, cutting through a sail to slide down, whatever, there's always, if the best filmmakers always have a way that it's actually so much simpler than you think it is, but on film it makes your mind go like, well, what the fuck, how did they do that? And it makes sense that all this, like a lot of this stuff, would start in silent pictures, because it's so visual based that they can make movies like this. And like, we've talked about before, we're pretty much at the end of the run here. They've pretty much got the silent filmmaking thing locked down, that you could get a movie this big, this just, rambunctious, and really set the path forward for everybody else to after, even though in America, it does take a little bit of time for them to catch up, because sound really fucked everybody up. So, Fairbanks kind of dropped the mic, and then everyone realized, wait, the mic's plugged in. Shit, sound's making everything harder for us.
And he personally, Fairbanks did not have an easy time in the sound era. I think he only makes a Kyle might have the info. I think he only makes like 4 sound films.
Ooh, yeah. Let's see. So he's got two. He does 2 more silent movies in 27 and 29. Then the talkie era happens. According to my research, he only did 1 true sound film, The Private Life of Don Juan, in 1934. And unfortunately, his voice was not enough to captivate audiences. The physicality no longer interested people at that time. They were interested in how you sounded more than how you looked.
Now, am I mistaken? Isn't there a version of yes? Okay, I there is a version of Taming of the Shrew that Pickford and Fairbanks do together.
Ooh.
That I believe was a sound film, because some of the selling point of it was you're going to get to see Pickford and Fairbanks on screen. You had not seen them in that capacity before, and talking and all of that. Pickford at that point had already spoken on screen in Coquette, but which she wins the Oscar for, the second Oscar for Best Actress. But this is Fairbanks and her speaking together on screen. I have not seen the 1929 Taming of the Shrew, but I remember hearing it is bad. It is boring and stiff. They both are not very good in it, and their marriage was crumbling at that point, so like it's just not a fun time. It's like a reverse Eyes Wide Shut. The marriage dissolving is in fact detrimental to the film in a major way.
Correct. Yeah. No, in a way, The Black Pirate is not only a culmination of his career and their careers and everything like that, but it is sort of the final moment. It's the peak. It's the beginning of the end in a lot of ways, because it feels like everything unravels. Although, from what I saw, it looks like the only thing that does not unravel as Fairbanks loses his career is the relationship with his son, Douglas Fairbanks Jr.,
who we have covered on this show as Rupert of Hentzau in The Prisoner of Zenda, and clearly takes after his dad.
Got some of that big dick sword swinging energy from Pop. Gotta love that. He's got that real I'm coming to fuck your wife energy.
That was the unexpected delight when we did Prisoner of Zenda. I think was Tom, you attested to kind of watching the movie and going like, yeah, this is good. And then when he just jumps out a window,
just fucking leaps out a window.
Yeah, let's do this.
Later, fairies.
Yeah, you can see all of that in Fairbanks Senior here and what he does. There is just something about the fact that, like Kyle, said this is the culmination of all. You really do feel that watching this, like that this is a guy taking everything he has learned from the film industry, from all of these years, from being on set as an actor, from observing things as a producer, from watching directors, all of that. This is him just kind of going all out. And I think, one thing it's worth noting is I'm saying all out. Restraint is exercised here in terms of, this is 2-strip Technicolor, but a lot of, and I don't know if you have these notes, Kyle, please forgive me if I'm taking this out of your book, but a lot of the work in this film, or in the pre-production, was they were going to do 2-strip Technicolor because Fairbanks felt like this was going to be, this is how pirates should be seen. But he didn't want the color to overwhelm the narrative. There was a lot of concern on his part that I think the quote is he thought that the public might at first be more intrigued by the colors than by the story itself. So we decided to practice restraint. They did a lot of testing to see if they could kind of take the color out of Technicolor. They wanted this to look more muted. They wanted it to look like paintings. They wanted it to look like Rembrandt, I think was the one that they really emphasized. So they tried to create a color palette for this film that is primarily like browns and greens. And you do see that here, that like a lot of this stuff does look like older paintings, right? That it has that muted tone so that the color does not take away from what you are actually watching. And Fairbanks was so concerned about this that when they were doing the tests, he discovered that his beard photographed green. So he, before every take, had to put red powder in his beard so that it would photograph normally. which is just delightful. I love thinking about that. That he just had to, that on set he basically just had like a red powdered beard just so people would not think he had like a moss on his face.
He's one of them soylent green people.
Oh, and
Yeah,
of course the screen debut of Bernadette Peters in the role. No, it's not. I don't know if you got this time. She looks so much like Bernadette Peters to me that I found it distracting.
I didn't have that problem, but
you also watch a lot less Bernadette Peters, to be fair.
That's also another part of this, yeah.
Sorry, Kyle. Sorry if I derailed you from all of your notes.
No, not at all.
I've been out drinking with these guys.
I mean, it helps a bit because part of, I think, why we keep talking about him evolving and having to sort of be his magnum opus, a lot of, during my research, I felt like the culmination of that happened over the course of 1920 and 1925. So once he's established United Artists, once he's got all of the influence and control over his works, once he no longer has to deal with any sort of studio influence and everything, he's able to make the three batch of movies, which I refer to as Ground Zorro, because it's essentially building blocks.
Wow, soon.
I know.
Gene Shalit, ladies and gentlemen.
And part of that is because his role in the Mark of Zorro, which I won't get too deep into because, like you mentioned, we're going to cover it later, but it is not only a lesson in knowing that audiences respond well to stories about underdogs, but it also allowed him to evolve outside of this traditional role that he had doing comedies and was able to transform fully into this adventure hero that we see translated in his work within the Black Pirate. It wasn't this rebrand in a way that audiences didn't buy. It worked. And then following up with Robin Hood in 1922, which is almost the exact opposite of this movie, a movie with a grand scale that focuses on big battles, essentially his big blockbuster, big check to kind of go big or go home, but rather than sort of using that and having the lesson be, okay, bigger is always better, it teaches Fairbanks how to scale differently, how to take a budget and to utilize it in a way that's effective across the board. It doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. And it's something that he continues to do in 1924 with The Thief of Baghdad, focusing a little bit more on narrative and spectacle and balancing the two of them. And by essentially checking all those boxes, acting, directing, cinematography, he's sitting there going, well, what's next? What do I do? How do I build on what I've already done? And that's when he finds Technicolor and decides, hey, I'm going to throw my own money into this, start developing the technology to make this better. Because I think I saw that as early as 1922, he had this dream of making this pirate adventure, but only wanted to do it if he was able to do it entirely in color.
Man, I'll say this. It's so funny. My relationship with Fairbanks as a star is such that when you mentioned Zorro, Kyle, you mentioned his Mark of Zorro, in my head I was like, man, that might be my favorite of his films. And then I'm watching this. You're talking about Robin Hood, but I'm watching this and going, nah, I think this one might be my favorite of his. And then you say Thief of Baghdad, and I'm like, fuck, I think that's my favorite of his. Yeah. I really do just go back and forth. Like, I do enjoy the hell out of all of them. I will admit, Robin Hood is less my bag. I don't know if you'll see too many people who will absolutely go to bat. I mean, it's not that it's bad. Right, I'm not suggesting it's bad at all, but it's kind of one of those ones where it's like it's in the collection of his notable films, but like nobody's naming it's like if you're talking about Connery's Bond films, like Robin Hood is Thunderball. It's not bad, but nobody's going like, you know what, my favorite, the best Connery ever did was Thunderball. Nobody's saying that.
Yeah, well, that's not true. Anthony's dad says it's his favorite. So go fuck yourself.
Okay, well. The
never
next
say
time,
ever again.
The next, yeah, well, we don't talk about that. We don't acknowledge that.
It's better than
I
most of the Moors.
I love even this, by the way, just that letter, that ransom letter, and the signatures. I don't know. It's a way to make text visually dynamic, and that's one of the things that I think we all really appreciate when we watch these silent films. Is like anytime the filmmakers find a way to make the text visually dynamic. You know.
Oh yeah, it's the little things that count. It's the little details that make things up. Now, just go back to the thing you were saying before. Do you think your feelings about his Robin Hood maybe have anything to do with the Errol Flynn Robin Hood sort of taking
Well,
its lunch money and sort of becoming the de facto Robin
you
Hood
know,
for the
I would
entire history of cinema?
Hmm.
I think that could be a factor, but the only reason I say it's not the entirety of it is the fact that there is an incredibly good Tyrone Power Zorro movie that is also called The Mark of Zorro that I also really like and most people view as the definitive, right? And yet still people give credit. I mean, both the Tyrone Power Mark of Zorro and this Mark of Zorro, Fairbanks' Mark of Zorro, are in the National Film Registry. But while Errol Flynn's Errol Flynn's Robin Hood is in the registry, Fairbanks' Robin Hood is not. I think some of it is. Kyle alluded to this in a way that like the Robin Hood that Fairbanks does, it is big, right? And there are impressive set pieces in that. But I do just feel like a little bit of the personality is missing in Robin Hood. Not him, he's still dynamic, but it's like there's that personal touch that I feel is absent in Robin Hood that is so present in Thief of Baghdad, in Black Pirate, in Mark of Zorro, where it's just one of those cases, I think, of he had as Kyle alluded, he had a larger budget, but he maybe just got a little more lost in that one than he does in the later films. And in Mark of Zorro. But again, Kyle, you could probably speak to that too in your own take on it. But.
Yeah, one of the reasons I mentioned Robin Hood at all is one of the quotes that I found about it came from a biographer of Fairbanks, Jeffrey Vance, who said that it was the first of his, in this case being Robin Hood, it was the first of his productions to be fully realized in every respect, which struck me considering in my head I'd be like, well, this feels like a magnum opus. And then once I started doing more research of like, okay, well, how big is this cast are we talking about? They're like 19 people. I'm like, there's no way. Like even a couple of times since just watching this again, I'm like, there's no way that's 19 people on there as opposed to hiring hundreds of people, hundreds of extras for Robin Hood, which is, a movie that sounds like is not as well received or anything. You could continue to, I guess, revital or utilize that formula in some way. He could have in a way been the first, I guess, Michael Bay in some ways, but instead decided to go, no, whether it was because he was financing these movies and didn't want to put the budget behind it. I'm sure part of it was also because of the cost associated with the production of the Technicolor shooting and everything, and probably had to cut some costs in some ways that he didn't have to worry about in his earlier films. But yeah, I guess that for me, I just kind of found that as a fascinating moment because despite being a trailblazer in this moment, anybody else could have sort of had that big budget, continue to utilize that big budget and just make it bigger as we're currently seeing in our industry. And instead he found ways to change that each time and do something a little bit different.
Well, I always with the ballooning budgets of shit now that just makes your eyes go cross because these movies seem like they don't actually have those budgets. I always go back to Corman talking about this, that in the 80s he was seeing the budgets ballooning, and he was like, well, I'm not going to be able to keep up with this because this is what the industry is going to become, but it's disgusting because they're not being smart filmmakers. They're just throwing money and not being smart, where you watch this and you go, yeah, he could have just hired hundreds of people and done this and that. It's like, no, I'm going to put all my money where the important stuff is, the stunts, the cinematography, the two colors strip, film, all that stuff. Why? If I'm just smart, I can just redress people and just move them. It's cinema. We don't need to have this illusion where it's one take and we gotta do 360 spinning camera shots to see everybody in the room. No, just be smart. Like, you can still get a big scale. Obviously, as we're watching with this movie, you can still get a big scale and not have to be obnoxious with your budget. It's almost like, honestly, the perfect example of this right now is that this week that we're recording this, Jurassic World 4, aka Jurassic Park 7, yeah, 7, is coming out from Gareth Edwards, who made it a point for his last movie, The Creator, to be like, you don't have to be crazy with the budgets on these movies. The Creator, $80 million. And you go, how the fuck did that cost only $80 million? But now you see in Jurassic World, and you're just like, you spent $300 million fucking dollars on this goddamn thing? How is that even possible?
Well, I mean, because look at, again, some of it, to that point, Tom, look at what we're seeing right here, right? It's the idea of a guy climbing across some rafters may not sound like that dynamic a stunt or that expensive a stunt, right? And a lot of producers' instincts now would be like, if he's going to do that, there should be like 15 explosions and 3 CGI tauntauns walking by or something, right? And instead, very wisely, like, that's just an interesting looking set that he's climbing across, right? Like, that's just an interesting looking set, and it catches your eye, and it does a lot of the work for you, right? It does a lot of the way to make this visually compelling. We saw that before with the climbing too. Like, if it's just an interesting environment, that's going to go a long way. Coming up with interesting environments and interacting with those environments in interesting ways. That's all it takes in a lot of cases. That said, I if I can revisit something, we're talking about like why Robin Hood doesn't totally work as well as Zorro with this. One of the things we're seeing here in the film, in the story, which I know we're not really getting too much into the story, but like, is we have Fairbanks playing this black pirate, this fearsome pirate, and we've watched him swashbuckle, and we're watching him shoot guys and all of that and get into these sword fights. And yet there's this thing of him looking after this princess, right? And his secret plan to scuttle her ashore. And there's a conflict to this, and there's an ambiguity to him a little bit. There's a, and not to mention there's the vengeance plotline and all, but there's this kind of this duality to him. And obviously Zorro is that duality, from the fearsome Zorro to Don Diego having to play like the over the top fop, right? And I think in some cases where Fairbanks really shines is getting to play that duality and that ambiguity, and you don't have that in the Robin Hood character, right? Like, Robin Hood is just Robin Hood, right? It's not like Robin Hood spends half of his story being like, but maybe I'm up to something sneaky, right? I mean, think about, and I'm sure this should come up in a million ways, but like Pirates of the Caribbean, the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie, Curse of Black Pearl. That movie works, and that movie works like a son of a gun because of the Jack Sparrow character, because you spend that whole movie going, I don't know what this guy's deal is 100%. The pirate movie, when it works because you're like, I'm not totally sure what these guys are. They're criminals, but they have a code of honor. They have this, they have that, and there's that ambiguity there, and I think that character-wise, that's when Fairbanks is really in the pocket, when there's this kind of roguishness he gets to play,
well, I think that's just any with any action hero. That's, I think, what
but I wouldn't say that with Errol Flynn. That's what I'm saying? Like, but Errol Flynn, I don't think that's when he's interested. I think Errol Flynn is just going to be your heroic swashbuckler type, That
could be the case, but I just think in general what we're mainly getting at here is not so much ambiguity and more so a dynamic character, where it's, what was the big thing about John McClane when Die Hard came out was that he's a competent badass, but he's also a human being. He's stepping on glass. He's getting, he's getting shot. He's scared of jumping off of a building. He's a human being. It's, he's a badass, but he's also got this quality, which is coming off the era of the Arnolds and the Stallones, where it's like, all right, they're these kind of, big, bad, burly machines going up against hordes of other things. Or, Rambo, he's a hero, but he's kind of crazy, but you kind of get it. Or Predator, it's like he's a CIA assassin, but he thinks the job they're on is bullshit, but now he's got to fight a fucking alien. It's just fun. It's, I think that's why Robin Hood is, other than Errol Flynn, has been, despite every fucking 5 years getting a new Robin Hood, one of the hardest characters to really get, because it's just like, yeah, that's him. He's gonna rob the rich. He's gonna do some fights. That's kind of his deal, unless you're Ridley Scott, and it's like, well, what if we dealt with the Crusades? And you go like, but I don't want to deal with that. I want Robin Hood to be a thief. That's good. What if that was your plot, Ridley? What an asshole.
Kyle, I don't know if you have more facts you want to read. I mean, listen, if you've run out, I'm happy to also just sing Pirates of Penzance for chunks of this, if that'll help people.
Oh, don't you worry. I got plenty. One of the things I forgot to mention when we were talking about the Technicolor cameras, there were 4 of them in use at all times. I believe they only needed to use 2 at a time, but they allotted for 4 to ensure that they had a negative that could work. So yeah, 4 cameras at all times. I imagine it's akin to whatever nonsense Nolan's got going on filming the Odyssey and trying to film that in a giant IMAX camera.
And if I can touch on Technicolor as well, one thing that's worth noting about this, we're talking about Fairbanks using this 2-strip Technicolor here, right? At the time he's doing this, Technicolor needed Fairbanks as much as Fairbanks needed Technicolor.
Mm-hmm.
The Technicolor technique. Oh, did you have this, Kyle? I don't want to take it from you if you got it.
No, please, by all means.
So the Technicolor process had existed for a while, and there were other films to do 2-strip Technicolor. There was a film from 1922 called The Toll of the Sea, which is about 40 minutes long, so I guess it counts as a feature-ish, at least then. And that did okay. And so it starts to be deployed in other places. Probably the most notable version of 2-strip Technicolor before this is Ben-Hur, the silent film version of Ben-Hur. Now, that's not in 2-strip Technicolor entirely, but they use it for certain sequences, right? It's like a special effect, like 3D would be used, right? So it's deployed sparingly. Interestingly enough, Fairbanks is in the background of Ben-Hur at one point, I believe. That might be that version. So, uncredited. 1924, a Western called Wanderer of the Wasteland comes out. And that is, we're doing feature-length 2-strip Technicolor. And it doesn't do great. And the process is still really fucking expensive. So nobody's bothering with Technicolor at this point. Like, nobody wants to deal with it. And it could have just been dead in the water. Technicolor kind of needed a big name like Douglas Fairbanks to take a chance on it, right? And to devote themselves to it. It's kind of not dissimilar in a way to... I mean, obviously, we're talking about a director here, but to what James Cameron does with 3D, right? Prior to Avatar, like 3D is a gimmick, 3D is whatever. And there were a lot of people in the industry who were like, we could do interesting stuff with 3D, but nobody wants to pay for it. Without a Cameron, 3D could have gone the way of a different technique that right now is dead. I don't know if people are listening to this in the future. Maybe somebody figured it out, but high frame rate. Ang Lee tried to push the high frame rate boulder up the hill, right?
No, and I will kill them all.
But it doesn't. But that's the thing. Thus far, it doesn't work. It hasn't been successful And it would take, like, truly the analog I would put out there with this is if Tom Cruise going to make Top Gun 3 is like, I insist that Top Gun 3 be in high frame rate. And not only do I insist that, I'm going to spend months refining this so that it is subtle and not distracting and it works better than it's ever worked before. That would be kind of the analog to what Douglas Fairbanks did for Technicolor and with Technicolor in this. It's not just that he stuck his neck out for it. It's that he put the time in to make Technicolor be a really useful tool instead of just a gimmick, which it could have easily been seen as prior to this. And having watched, I have not watched all of either Wanderer of the Wasteland or Toll of the Sea, but I've watched portions of them. And not only does this do Technicolor better than those, boy howdy, I don't mean to judge a whole film just based on clips, but I can see why Wanderer of the Wasteland was not something that was lighting people up. I'll just say that. Meanwhile, this, like, look at the light of the fire, all of that. It's striking when it needs to be striking without ever being distracting. Mm-hmm. Like that pops, you know?
Well, you know, it's right. It's just again how all this stuff, everything is cyclical, or everything's in the subconscious cinematic stew, man. You know, visually, not too dissimilar from what Eggers was doing in Nosferatu 6 months ago. That very almost desaturated look until you want that pop of color. It's all just, once somebody puts an idea out into the world, somebody will use it again. Again, like you said, maybe high frame rate becomes the thing. Somebody figures it out. I doubt it, because it's just not cinematic. I don't want to watch a tech demo from Best Buy when I go to the movie theaters. That's just me. I'd like to see something that looks like a movie and not the news. But what do I know?
Do you think, Tom, somebody in the 1920s seeing The Black Pirate was like me seeing Gemini Man, where they're just like, I can't handle it. There's blues and reds and greens. I'm going to throw up.
They might have
my brain can't take it.
I mean, listen, they might have been thinking something was up with the bathtub gin that they drank earlier before they saw the movie. So maybe. But well, that's also just another thing that's funny about cinema, is that anytime something new comes about, it's the death of cinema. This is not what cinema is about. And you try not to be that guy. 3D, listen, I get it with Avatar. Cameron does it right. For the most part, I don't think people do it right. I want it the way Cameron does it, or I want it schlocky horror style. I want things popping out at me. I want Jason squeezing somebody's head and the eyeball flies into my general direction. IMAX, maybe not as much discussion as that. People just sort of readily agreed, like, yeah, this is cool, but sound had it. You know, widescreen,
CinemaScope, Cinerama,
you know, home video, TV, any new thing that changes the discourse around filmed storytelling becomes, oh my God, it's the fucking end, it's fucking over. And you go, guys, relax. And then you watch season 3 of Ted Lasso and you go, maybe this is the end.
But no, I mean, we've not talked at all about Billy Dove in the role of the princess. I am confident, if Kyle's done as much research as he has, I am confident there's one particular anecdote about the princess that I'm sure he has pulled regarding this film. But I don't think we're quite there yet. Am I wrong?
We are not quite there, right? We're going to get there towards the end.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
I mean,
the best little anecdote.
I mean, certainly completely unrelated. I would very much like to segue into a part of my notes I didn't really get to talk much about, which is his relationship to Mary Pickford.
Yeah.
Because they meet around the time that he strikes the deal with Paramount. Both of them meet supposedly at a friend's party, and it is not for any romance. It is truly a meeting of the minds, as we keep saying. They are at the height of both of their careers. They are star powers, and their meeting, call it fate, call it chance, whatever. There was clearly a connection, a melding of minds from their initial moment or from their initial meeting, and from there, I think it just snowballed from there. They had a desire to want to challenge the way that artists controlled their work. They started attending public appearances together in 1917 to support the U.S. during World War I. There were these Liberty Bond tours that they did with Charlie Chaplin, which is where the press started to see the two of them in more of a light and started kind of putting some pieces together and going, hey, what's going on here? Is there something more? Which I should also note, as a little entanglement in all of this. Both of them were very much married at the time.
I'm glad. I was going to be like, are you just skipping over that part?
No.
Are you just like, don't worry about
it? In fact, I had a note here that said they fell in love and they lived happily ever after. Nothing happened except for the part where they were both married, because that's right. I believe in 1909 is when Pickford gets married, or excuse me, when Fairbanks gets married. He gets married to, Annabeth Sully, daughter of a man who made his fortune in the cotton industry. So it was very much an early marriage, one that provided financial stability for Fairbanks, but it allowed him to pursue his career on Broadway in a way that I don't think many people at that time were allotted, even now. I would argue it's one of the ways that he was able to have the extra star power to break out in the way that he did. So I didn't do a whole lot of research on his time in New York and on Broadway, but I do sort of think that gave him a competitive edge into finding ways to translate that into film. And then he moves to LA in 1915. Pickford is married to another actor. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I had this down somewhere, but
you know what, folks? Go back to our episode from 2 years ago.
There you go.
We say it there.
There you go.
We talk about it there.
The only thing I remember is he's an alcoholic. She continues to rise in stardom, and the two of them meet and eventually fall in love, and then marry in 1920. Form truly the powerest of power couples.
I do think, Kyle, you noted, you go, well, all I know is her first husband was an alcoholic. And I'm like, oh, well, Mary, it's not going to pan out great with the new one in that regard either. Doug was perhaps, look, Douglas Fairbanks wrote a self-help book about how to live long and healthy, and he did neither of those things. So, it's just worth noting. I hate to be rude to the man, but not the advice I want to be following, if I'm being frank.
Like Douglas Fairbanks, hey.
He did not live his final years were not pleasant, nor were they well into old age. It's a real bummer, if we're being honest. At least, like, of that trio, like Pickford and Chaplin get to live a long time and get to really see a new wave of appreciation. Fairbanks doesn't even live long enough to receive his honorary Academy Award. He dies in 39.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, it's like he doesn't actually live that much longer after this. And as I said, those later years were not positive ones. I think, some of that had to do with his habits. Some of that had to do with the marriage coming apart. Some of that, he had an array of health problems. And I think some of it just has to do with the fact that, like, when you think of that core trio, right? When you think of Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and Charlie Chaplin, there is nothing about aging that would make it impossible for Mary Pickford to keep doing dramas. And there's nothing about aging that would make it impossible for Charlie Chaplin to keep doing comedies. But getting older and getting sicker is going to make it harder for Fairbanks to do the stuff that he does. That said, we haven't commented much on screen. I love to death that little trick with the blindfold and the rope. I love him cutting the rope on his hands while he's blindfolding him. This is just there are some great visual bits that like we should acknowledge. Like, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that you would not have to change a thing about, and they would still play to audiences now. Like visual tricks and scenes and set pieces that I think just legitimately still play today with no translation needed. I don't know if you guys had that experience yourselves watching it for the first time, but that's one of the things that really strikes me when I go back to this one.
I mean, no, I didn't have any problem with that with stuff. I thought it played very well, but I also think sometimes our kinds of people can maybe be a little blind to the fact that we watch movies differently, and you talk to normies, and they wouldn't be great with this movie. Let's just be honest.
No, I'm not saying they would watch the whole film. I'm saying like, okay, that bit in particular, right? That bit of tucking the knife in the front of his pants, right, in the front of his belt, tying the blindfold, and then doing that close up of Fairbanks cutting his ropes on the knife in the belt. If you do that exact same beat with those exact same shots in a contemporary action film, you basically just need to add score and dialogue, and that would still play well. That's one of the things that I think really strikes me in a way, is like, there's, with this film in particular, other films we watch where we go like, well, this would have played really well for the time. There's a lot of stuff in this where it's not a for the time, where it's just like, yeah, shit. Again, you add some score, you add the Pirates of the Caribbean theme, and show that same thing of the guy sliding down the sliding down the canvas, and it plays just as well.
Well, that's why the icons, the groundbreakers, sometimes may not last forever, but they'll have the bits that you can look on and be like, well, yeah, I see where that, I'm pretty sure Cruise has done a bit like that, one of the Mission Impossibles. It's just it's all got to start somewhere, basically. So, while I might not think a lot of the normies would be able to handle this movie because they need sound and someone telling them that they're good for having the right politics, but they'll see some bits. You could show them bits
that's the thing.
Out of context. They'll be like, oh, cool. Why aren't they talking? But this is cool.
I just love, like, and another nice thing is that we had that great set piece earlier of him kind of climbing up the rope, climbing up the side of the ship. So now we kind of, even though we haven't gotten like a great sense of the entire geography of the ship, we return to somewhere that we've seen him before. It does kind of add a sense of space without us having to do these like long tracking shots around the ship or anything like that too. The visual geography is very smart in this film for what it is and what it's attempting to do. I should have talked more, but I just genuinely did get distracted by Donald Crisp for a second. Because I feel like maybe I'm wrong here. I find that in portions of this film he is unrecognizable, but like they do that close up on him, and I'm like, yeah, it's the guy from How Green Is My Valley. Yeah, I know that. Yep.
All right. Well, while we're all just silently watching the movie, let me break the fucking silence with this question. I feel like I would like to propose to you, Kyle. You could join in if you want. If not, that's fine. I don't care. Why do you think, other than say this and Pirates of the Caribbean, maybe another or two, why don't pirate movies work?
I think I honestly, I think some of it has to do with the fact that audience tastes ebb and flow, right? A pirate movie requires a good amount of suspension of disbelief in a way that is not necessary with a number of different types of subgenre. But I also think, like, the Western and taste for the Western ebbs and flows, right? However, you can do a Western a lot cheaper than you can do a pirate movie, right? By its very nature, a pirate movie is more expensive because you have to have water, you have to have all of this shit. Pirates are still exciting, but people for the most part expect to be able to see the boat and the water and all of that. Unless you are the Dread Pirate Roberts or Hamlet, you can't get away with just going, I did a bunch of pirate stuff. It's off screen. You can't really get away with that. And I think that so it's a lot easier to make Westerns and to take a chance on Westerns when the audience interest has faded. Whereas a pirate movie, you're spending a shit ton of money to do one of these. You're not taking that risk when things are low. And with that too, I think there's also an element of, I think that the pirate movie, and pirates in general, like, I don't know. I think that it's a tougher balance to strike narratively.
Is it basically just like, is there only so much you can really do? Is that ultimately like you bring up Westerns, but like Westerns can have subgenres and different kinds of stories, and Power of the Dog and Meek's Cutoff are not a fistful of dollars or a Stagecoach. Where a pirate movie, it's essentially like, well, it's going to be an adventure movie, right? It's an action adventure thing. You're not going to get like a staid fucking Merchant Ivory type movie for a pirate movie.
Well, I mean, I think that's the tricky thing, right? Is that to say pirate movie and then compare it to Western, it's almost like, a pirate movie, the analogous thing would be like bandit movie or cowboy movie or something like that, right? These other Western subgenres you're talking about are like, well, we're going to look at a time period from a different angle. You can do nautical movies and maritime movies, but like the Power of the Dog version of a pirate movie is like Master and Commander. You know what I mean? You can do naval movies. Now, we don't have nearly as many of those anymore, but there were a number of nautical and naval films for a long time. But, I think what I'm getting at is like, when you're talking about a High Noon, right? Or My Darling Clementine, compared to like the rough and tumble John Wayne Westerns, that's kind of like looking at something like Mutiny on the Bounty as a prestige seafaring film, but there's not really pirates in Mutiny on the Bounty. So I think it's just pirate perhaps is a subgenre more so than like Western or something like that, where it's a little more limited in that regard.
I'm also trying to look at like what came out over the last like 20 odd years or something like that, just because in my head I'm like, what really would you associate as like a pirate movie outside of Pirates of the Caribbean? And like even some people would like consider like, well, like Pan in 2015 or Peter Pan and Wendy from 2023 and everything. And I think it is just like kind of coming down to the quality of some of these things.
Mean, you had Our Flag Means Death for 2 seasons on Max.
I did forget, and it's only frankly because it's on Stars, but I forget Black Sails.
Black Sails, yeah, Black Sails.
Well, it's just because you remember the conversation around Pirates of the Caribbean when that was coming out, and then it became, there's no good pirate movies, blah, blah, blah. We grew up at Cutthroat Island, one of the biggest box office bombs in history, blah, blah, blah. Pirates of the Caribbean, big fucking massive success, gets Johnny Depp an Oscar nomination, blah, blah, blah. And then they make 4 more, and they immediately lost any sense of what made the first movie work, and they got worse and worse as they go on. And you go like, all right, like what, like how, it really is just that hard, huh? Like it's so weird that it's just like, and yeah, you can bring up 2 of the examples you brought up are TV things, which is different, but still, you would think in the aftermath of Pirates of the Caribbean, and even though they all the sequels all fucking suck, they all make like $1 billion. You would think like, why aren't people just constantly copying this, chasing this trend? And it's because, all right, they just seemingly don't work. Even when they do work, they suck. So like, why even try? And it's because watching this, you got to, you're thinking like, oh, what's our pick going to be for the registry? And I'm just like, well, right. it's gonna be hard going for the 1-to-1 pirate thing. Uh, so and it just made me think what the fuck is it? Like, don't be
Yeah,
coy
no,
over there.
it's I mean, but that's kind of the thing is one of the things that makes this so interesting in a way. It makes Black Pirate so interesting is like obviously this is a pirate movie, but also it's just so much like what you can do with this movie is like this is in the DNA of so many action movies that come later. You know, Tom, you correctly pointed out like how much of this is a Jackie Chan movie, right? Like
Yeah,
how much of this uh which is basically and I'm not trying to be reductive of this, but like even how so many of those Hong Kong action films basically boil down to, all right, what's our guy's motive? He wants revenge. He gets in with a group of criminals, so we get to watch him do cool crime stuff, but we still know he's a good guy. Then he meets a girl. He rescues the girl. Like,
yeah,
that's about the structure of these things.
yeah.
You know,
Nobody's talking about John Woo's stuff because of the fucking deft screenwriting touch he brings to the movies. It's because the guns go bang bang, there's doves, and everything's super slow, and you go, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
and hey, this movie has a dove in the form of actress Billy Dove. So,
Oh,
you
look at
know,
that. It all comes together. Look at that.
it's a fun bit. But by the way, Kyle, you were talking about Fairbanks and Pickford. Did you know that Pickford and Fairbanks are the first people to put their handprints at Grauman's Chinese Theater?
No, I mean, but that would make sense since
Yeah.
Fairbanks is the first president of the Motion Picture Academy.
Interesting thing. Speaking of Grauman's, by the way, we should talk. We almost never talk on this show at all about when films debut, but I will because I think this is interesting. So the New York premiere for The Black Pirate was at the Selwyn Theater on March 8th of 26, but the Hollywood premiere, May 14th at Grauman's Egyptian Theater, so not the Chinese theater, the Egyptian Theater, and it premiered on the same day back to back with Mary Pickford's The Sparrow. So it was they were really packaging like the Hollywood it couple thing. Also look at this nice little dolly shot we get going on here. We haven't really gotten a moving camera too much in this film, but we're getting that here, and it's a good touch. You know, it's the little things, right? It's the little look at that. Look at that. You know. I said I think that and we were talking about Robin Hood compared to this, isn't it? That's the thing that really makes this film special is you can do these, look at this massive shot of this boat, but there's also thought put into like the smaller visual elements that really make it all come together, you know? Not to mention, credit where credit is due, Fairbanks also knows just how to shoot himself at the right angles where he looks cool as hell. And that's a big part of this too. Is he understands, I mean, I think I have it written down somewhere. Jeffrey Vance, who Kyle quoted earlier when talking about this film, said that it was an opportunity for Fairbanks to showcase his favorite production value himself.
I mean,
It's a nice little line. You know, it's a nice little line. Listen, if I was Douglas Fairbanks, I'd highlight that too, quite frankly. The guy had that energy to him, you know. Oh, and you know what? I'll note this while we're in a bit of a quiet patch. We talked about many things that homage this film. We didn't even acknowledge a film we covered this season pays homage to this movie, or does like a riff on this movie, because they do this. They do the rope swinging gag and the tearing the canvas in A Night at the Opera. Harpo does that toward the end of the film.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe we screwed up the release order on this, quite frankly, because we've already covered the parody version of this in the season we have this. Look at how good Fairbanks looks in this shot in the Technicolor. Like, it's really using it to the best of the abilities there, you know? Like, the color really works. And him swimming underwater, just, I don't know, there's a lot of thought going into this in a way that, like, it's not just about, oh, I'm going to do a bunch of stunts. It's about what's really going to pop on screen, you know?
Fun fact, he worked with an Olympic swimmer on his swimming scenes. So
Really?
I have to double check the name. It's in my notes somewhere. Hang on.
Don't worry, we're just doing nothing on a commentary. It's fine.
No, like the worst part was that I was like, when Kyle said, oh, he worked with an Olympic swimmer, I'm like, oh, do we have the name? Like, I'd love to know the name, as though I'm going to recognize the name of an Olympic swimmer from the 1920s. Like, if it's not Michael Phelps or Katie Ledecky, I'm not going to know it. Who am I kidding? But nevertheless. Well, while Kyle looks for that, I guess I should give a shout out here because I have not yet. I keep complimenting the set design. I should give a shout out. Carl Oscar Borg is the name of the person who oversaw the set design and consulted experts Dwight Franklin and Robert Nichols. So just I had that noted, and I always feel bad when I do not acknowledge the names of below the line crew members. Nevertheless.
And I feel bad when I forget Olympic gold medalist Johnny Weissmuller.
Oh, shit! Really?
Shut
And
the
it turns
fuck
out
up.
you do know his name.
Shut the fuck up.
No, I'm serious. So, do you know why? Do you know why I know that? Okay. The only reason I say this, I don't know like Johnny Weissmuller per se, but here you go, guys. I'll read you his Wikipedia straight up. Following his retirement from swimming, Weissmuller played Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan in 12 feature films for MGM. We will legitimately be talking about Johnny Weissmuller in a future episode of this show. I bring up the Great Movie Ride at Disney World all the time. One of the animatronics in the Great Movie Ride is Johnny Weissmuller as Tarzan. So, yes, I actually do know Johnny Weissmuller. I did not realize he had that prolific a swimming career. I guess he like I'm looking at it and it's very clear that he was famous as a swimmer, and I didn't know that. I know him solely for his acting career. Which would be the equivalent of somebody going, "Oh, Bruce Willis acted. I only know his music career." But that's me. I did not know. So I'll be damned. God damn. You know what? As we get to this climactic fight scene here, unless you had notes you wanted to read here, Kyle, I could also read the registry statement, which we have not done yet.
Go for it. I realized I hadn't incorporated that yet,
fine.
So let's do that.
I'll give that a read real quick while we watch this rather epic duel. This swashbuckling tour de force by Douglas Fairbanks, king of silent action adventure pictures, is most significant for having been filmed entirely in two-strip Technicolor, a process still being perfected at the time, and the precursor to Technicolor processes that would become commonplace in the 1950s. Fairbanks plays a nobleman who has vowed to avenge the death of his father at the hand of pirates, and once upon the pirate's vessel, protects a damsel in distress, Bessie Love, taken hostage by the band of thieves. Fairbanks wrote the original story under a pseudonym, and Albert Parker directed. So that's what they put. So that is what the National Film Registry had to say. I'm going to note, by the way, I don't know if this was an I'm not on the registry's website. I have this in my notes. I don't know if this is an autocorrect or what, but I think they have a typo in here. So, just going to call that out a little bit because it's Bessie Dove is the name of the actress. Again, I don't know if that's spelled correct on my part or what have you, but perhaps they mistyped the name. Also, just, normally, for folks who are just listening to this commentary for the first time, normally we end this with saying, how do you think this did at the Academy Awards? I'm just going to cut that out right now, Tom. There was no Oscars this year. So
yeah, I know.
Don't worry about it.
I wasn't.
Though, quite frankly, one would argue in terms of like the evolution of action cinema, you might not get Wings if it isn't for this. So, which is the first Best Picture winner just a couple years later. Or just a year later, I guess, right? Wings is what, 27, right?
I think so.
Yeah, Wings is 1927. Shit, that's a year after this. Wow. You never really think action. I love this. Look at them passing him up. This is such a great little visual. Look at this. Looks like they're going to a Morton Joe. It's beautiful. We love it. But yeah, I guess, you don't really think action movie fans were eating good in 1926 and 27, but I guess they were. You never really think about it.
We're always eating good.
Another fun fact here for you. We've talked a little bit. Obviously, Fairbanks doesn't live much longer after this, dying in 1939. Supposedly his final words spoken to his son, quote, "Never feel sorry for a man who has done what he wanted to do."
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, there is just something about, I know it sounds silly, but like every time they do a close-up of him, you're like, God damn, he really did have it. He really did just have that movie star energy in such a way. Is this the part, you know what, I'm just going to cut to it now. I think, or I'll have you cut to it now, Kyle. Should we share the uncredited cameo in this film as we near the end of it?
Yes, so none other than the Mary Pickford herself appears at a cameo towards the end, where the princess and the black pirate share a tender kiss, which we will point out. And spoilers for a nearly 100-year-old movie at this point.
Yes. But that makes it significant because this is, color footage of Mary Pickford, which we don't really have, especially during this time. It's not like she was doing Technicolor films or anything like that. And yes, it is great to see, this iconic screen couple in a film together on screen, kissing, especially because, again, Taming of the Shrew is not good. So, helps to get it when they're in their prime, a little thing that we haven't acknowledged yet, too, like, even just as silly as it sounds, the well-done use of shadow in parts of this film. The way that Fairbanks allows... Look at the way that silhouette appears behind him. It's like Peter Pan in his shadow. It's a beautiful little visual. And it's that level of craft going on in this one that really... You can't just limit it to like, well, this is impressive because of the Technicolor, or this is impressive because of one stunt. Like, it really is just a really smartly crafted film.
I also really appreciate the simplicity of this final moment, the revelation that he is a Duke. I feel like in so many movies, they're like rushing towards the end to be like, I'm going to introduce this thing. I'm going to introduce this thing. And it's this one final moment in the last 5 minutes where you kind of put that mysterious piece together, and rather than it going off the rails, it somehow puts it all together and you go, yeah, okay, sure, totally makes sense.
Which is also, it's funny because like that's a really good dramatic beat, for the purposes of this film. It's also like the comedic ending of Pirates. Oh yeah, Jesus Christ!
Right here.
Yep. Here we go. So that was,
hey baby,
that was Mary Pickford in the wig and dress, which meant that, again, we got to see Hollywood's top couple kiss, even though it wasn't like written out or anything. Like, it wasn't like I don't know, maybe they The Treasure in the Secret Hiding Place, a wedding gift. So I'm just going to put this out there, fellas. The bar for wedding gifts is set at pirate treasure in a hiding place. So I'm just saying. Should I put that on the registry for the wedding is what I'm asking.
Best I can do is colored photo of Mary Pickford.
Oh, listen.
Hey, Kyle, unfortunately, I already have one. And I'm not joking. I have one right next to me.
Listen, buddy, I am going to just give you some trash I find from the sea and make you look for it at the wedding. So I'm ahead of you. It's the reason why I'm the best man. I'm ahead of you. I got this.
The audience can't see, but Kyle can. I wasn't joking, Kyle. I literally have
Oh my
color
God.
photograph of Mary Pickford sitting next to me at my desk as we do
Chilling
this.
with a dog and a cat.
A dog and a cat
on her shoulder.
And on the other side is Rudolph Valentino with a dog. So
Magnificent.
these are the things that decorate our home.
And there goes Muriel one last time before it's
Yes.
blown the fuck up.
God, I really like that is one thing, Kyle, I did not know until you mentioned it. Like, I really can't believe those aren't models. Like that is impressive that they're not.
It truly was the first thing I thought. I was like, okay, initially I was like, oh, I wrote it off. I was like, okay, we've always seen things blow up, but then I'm like, is it a model though? I had no idea that they made like essentially 3 different ships. The other 3 were just the ones that we saw mostly like in the scenes and everything, but they were just like essentially top down. The bottom part of it was essentially just on a weird dolly so that you were able to tilt it back and forth like it was on the water.
What a goddamn picture. Well, since you sent us in, do you want to send us off too, Kyle?
Yeah, boys, like we always do.
Well, I was going to say do the set, everybody else stick around.
Oh, you're talking about the full thing. All right. Well,
we have to add a cut in here somewhere,
Stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry. The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration, on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
Alright, so, pirate movie. I said in the episode, kind of hard to find pirate stuff that really measures up, deserves to be in the registry. But, I found one. And, I'm going with Captain Phillips. Because I just think it's funny to be like, hey, here's the Black Pirate, this swashbuckling movie, pirate, action adventure. Then you watch Captain Phillips and you go, oh, this is what piracy is. And it's just a bunch of malnourished men just storming ships on rickety little buoys and just not succeeding and getting fucking sniped by SEAL team members. And it's just sad. And it ends with Tom Hanks having a PTSD breakdown. I'm just like, boy, howdy. If that doesn't connect to the Black Pirate, I don't know what does. So, just for the laughs, I'm going with Captain Phillips.
Here's what I'm going to say. So Tom and I have been friends for more than a decade. We've had our ups, we've had our downs. In all of that, there has never been a time where my brain has thought, I want to punch this man in the face. But earlier, before we recorded this segment, without us giving away what we were doing, I said, Tom, you alluded in the episode, there's really only one pirate movie. Referring, of course, to 2003's Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. And I said, you're not picking that, are you? And he assured me, no, I'm not. Which made me feel good, because that's my pick. But then he insisted on going first. And then proceeded to go, there's really only one pirate movie, and I found one. And immediately, my brain misfired, and the impulse was like, if I could reach through the screen right now, I would want to hit this man in the face. A feeling I've truly never had before in a friendship. I might, Tom, as you're doing yours, include the video of me, because I couldn't contain my reaction of like, oh, okay. I was so annoyed for a second. So, obviously, if anybody has listened to this show for years, Tom makes fun of me for being the Disney boy or what have you. So of course, this would be where I'd go. But it's also the fact, like, yeah, personally, I would, as much as I may be a fan of Disney movies, like, if there was no good film adaptation of a Disney park ride, I wouldn't put it up there. I'm not going to put up Mission to Mars or The Country Bears or either of the Haunted Mansions. But the fact that there is a movie based on a Disneyland ride that not only could be suggested to the registry, but that if next year they put it in the registry, it wouldn't even get the kind of reaction that like Shrek or Spy Kids gets, right? It would just have people going, oh yeah, of course. Like, it's this crazy thing where, look, everybody has heard a million times about like the level of shit that Jerry Bruckheimer and Gore Verbinski were getting while this film was in production. You don't need me to sit here and tell you the stories of like, well, everybody was looking at the dailies. They didn't know what the hell Johnny Depp was doing or anything like that. You've heard it all a million times. Let's just focus on the fact that in 2003, at a time where the rest of the Walt Disney Company output is kind of crumbling, they make a movie that not only is a huge hit financially, not only gets, as Tom alluded, an Oscar nomination for Johnny Depp, which is absolutely insane that happened for that type of movie. That just does not happen. But the fact that this thing I don't actually have to make an argument for why Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl should be in the National Film Registry, because it has so entered the cultural canon. That is crazy. And Tom alluded to in our commentary, like, there are not a lot of successful pirate movies. Nobody expected this thing to work. But it does. It works because it taps into something fundamental about cinema. It works because it plays off of what has been innovated over the years. It looks back on why these swashbucklers were so fun. It works because, God damn it, that score is so good. That score is undeniable. I mean, when they did the anniversary re-release, I think last year or 2 years ago, my partner and I went, and we were both kind of struck by how much it still plays like gangbusters. It really is a kind of totemic film for its time, and that first film really just, it's one of the quintessential films of its era, of that decade. And it's just it's crazy that it's as good as it is. So yeah, my pick for the registry, because yes, as Tom alluded, it is a 1-to-1. You really do see the DNA of Douglas Fairbanks in this film that comes out 80-something years later or 70-something years later. My pick for the National Film Registry, undeniably, is Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl from 2003.
Next week,
Dr. Will Dodson joins us to talk about Ode to Artifice and all things Kenneth Anger.
I feel like this was kind of a pivotal point in his expression of interest about the occult and magic and stuff. It's really becoming more and more of his focus. And
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natale and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kyle Lampar and edited by Mike Natale and Kyle Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time, as We don't watch you. You're watching us.